is time for Around the 412 with Smitty and Tyler.
Welcome back to another episode of Around the 412. I am Tyler. With me, as always, is my co-host Smitty. Be sure to go follow us on all of our social medias at Around the 412, and also go check out our YouTube where we're posting not just the podcast, but some individual clips of the shows and some other good things. So go subscribe to us there, leave a like, leave a comment, let us know what you think of what we're posting, let us know what you wanted to see, any questions you might have about any of the Pittsburgh sports teams, leave it down in the comments on the YouTube. So go subscribe over there. This is the Steelers show. And, you know, OTAs is over, so it's the last, I guess, major news until we get to training camp. But, yeah, I feel like OTAs went by pretty quickly compared to, like, what I felt like it was going to be when they started. Maybe it always does. I don't know. It just seems like it came by and went.
Yeah. I don't know. It's weird because maybe it's just also, you know, to bring the life conversation into it, as we get older, I just feel like time goes faster. You know, I turned 29 in a week, and it's flying by. So maybe that's just why. Now the off seasons just fly by too.
I was thinking the same thing actually a little bit ago, because I was thinking about whenever you and I and a few of our buddies went to Detroit, which actually was brought up I think last week on Twitter by North Shore 9.
North Shore 9.
But I was thinking about that, and I was like, man, that was like 7 years ago. In August, that'll be 7 years ago when that happened. And it's just crazy how fast time is flying. I'm sorry we're getting this deep into a podcast that's about the Steelers this early, but man, time does really fly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, you never know what you're going to hear on Around the 412. It might be conversations about life. So that's why you got to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. You never know what you get on here. I feel like the next conversation that we're going to have, just based off how the comments went on Steelers Afternoon Drive when I expressed my opinion about it, and how my mentions were on X when I expressed my opinion about it, could be a little uncomfortable. So I'll just start off by, on the surface, saying that this is just my opinion. I don't hold anybody's opinion against them for this, as long as they keep their opinions consistent when it comes to this cases that don't involve the Steelers, because I feel like a lot of times people have their bias comes into it. And if this player were to have signed with another team, they would be making fun of that team for signing this player and bashing them. So I'll preface by saying that the Pittsburgh Steelers brought back cornerback Cam Sutton, brought him back into the fold, who was released by the Detroit Lions because of his. It bothers me that it was put out there as off the field issues, you know, because that to me doesn't really put into the scope what we're talking about here with domestic battery. Right, exactly. But we're talking about a domestic battery situation, and one that he has already admitted guilt to by entering into a pretrial diversion program to, you know, get help with this, basically, for people that have committed domestic abuse. So it's not a matter of, you know, innocent until proven guilty at this point. He has admitted guilt to this, went into a program that he has to complete because of it. And that will be the end of the case. It won't go any further in terms of in the court of law. Now, the NFL presumably will suspend him for a period of time based off it being reduced from a felony to a misdemeanor, and a similar case going to Charles Amenahu last year. You're probably looking at a 6-game suspension for Cam Sutton. I put out there on X, and this is coming from somebody that, if you watched or listened to the show in the past when Cam Sutton was on the football team, I was a huge fan of Cam Sutton. Have his jersey somewhere upstairs. I did not want the Pittsburgh Steelers to sign Cam Sutton, fully acknowledging somebody's going to give him a second chance. I believe in life, people are deserving of second chances. I feel like I'm pretty open on here about things that go on in my life. People know about the mental struggles that I've gone through, the battles that I've had internally, a lot of my, you know, family situations, stuff like that. Domestic abuse, not necessarily in my house, but in my dad's house, very prevalent for him growing up, and just hearing the stories about that. Like it's something that I have I feel like most people have a zero tolerance policy for that. To the point where I didn't want my team that I root for being the one to give Cam Sutton that second chance, especially being so fresh. And that was my personal opinion of it. If you are of the opinion that personal feelings shouldn't come into this because it's just football, you don't care about the off the field stuff, it's just all about winning football games, so be it. You're right to have that opinion. again, just want it to be consistent. If you're of the opinion that everybody deserves second chances and his second chance should come in Pittsburgh, so be it. I'm not going to, argue back and forth with people about it. I just personally, because of the things in my life and how I feel about the situation, did not want the football team that I root for to be the one that give Cam Sutton a second chance at this point in time.
I think that's totally understandable. I do. And I think that a lot of people want to just put their biases towards the situation instead of aside from the situation. And a lot of people will, like you said earlier, that if this was any other team that it happened to, that they're going to be signing that player, and not just Cam Sutton. We've seen it happen in the past. Like we mentioned it when we were talking about Cam Sutton last week. I mentioned like the Kareem Hunt situation where Cleveland ended up bringing him in. Like obviously a team is going to sign these players. Does it have to be your team? No, but someone is going to. And so I understand it from that standpoint. People are going to try to swing it to like if someone or if some other team didn't do it, we need to, or something like that. I personally, I'm on the side of you. I don't think the Steelers should have signed him. If I was running the Steelers, if I was the GM, I'm Omar Khan, I'm not signing Cam Sutton, and that's just because of my personal feelings towards the situation. I just don't want to bring in a player that has had an involvement like that. And maybe that is harsh to some people. Maybe that is too far for some people that say you need a second chance. And that's why it's not my decision, but that's just my opinion on it. And that's why I knew we were going to have this conversation, and I knew that we were going to discuss it. And we discussed it a little bit last week, like what we thought about bringing in Cam Sutton, because we were exploring, like, what are we going to do at the nickel corner position?
Yeah.
And his name obviously was brought up. Now it's confirmed. Obviously, Cam Sutton is going to be the Steelers' nickel corner. And from a football-only perspective, I think that's great. And I think that a lot of the discussion moving forward, after this conversation, should probably just be football only, because we're airing our own opinions on it and how our own feelings towards it. I would not have signed Cam Sutton. It's out there. That's how I feel. But I think that outside of that, now that that's out there, we both agree on that. And a lot of people agree or disagree with us. It doesn't matter. Moving forward, whether we like it or not, Cam Sutton's going to be here. So now we can just talk about what that means for the Steelers football team. And what that means is I think that they have secured a position of need, and whether they have a suspension or not, how long that suspension is going to be, ultimately they're going to have to figure that out for a few games. But whenever Cam Sutton is available for the Steelers, I think they have secured a spot for a player that they're very familiar with, and they know that they can play the position. And I was always of the opinion, even though the Steelers started to use Cam Sutton when he was here in his first tenure with the Steelers in different positions outside of just being that nickel corner, I always thought that he was best suited and his highest capabilities were in that slot position. And so I think that from a just technical football perspective, when Cam Sutton is available to play for the Steelers, the secondary is looking really good right now. They shored up a position that was very questionable moving forward into this season. And now you're looking at a defense that doesn't have a ton of holes, especially when you're looking at just the starters. You're looking at a very solid defense going into 2024.
Yeah, I mean, from a football perspective, like you're saying, you got Joey Porter Jr. and Dante Jackson on the outside. Now you can plug Cam Sutton into the slot. And then obviously you got Minkah Fitzpatrick on the back end. You bring in Deshaun Elliott, who I think, you know how much I liked Terrell Edmonds here. I think he's an upgrade upon him, and then DeMonte KZ and 3 safety sets as well. I think that they have their best secondary once Sutton comes back, since when we learned who Cam Sutton was in 2019, 2020, when they had Joe Hayden, Steven Nelson, Mike Hilton, and Cam Sutton. They traded for Minkah Fitzpatrick to go along with Terrell Edmonds on the back end. Like, I think that's the type of secondary that this could be now, with Cam Sutton being the missing piece from a football perspective. So I honestly, I do think you're looking at probably a 6-game suspension, though. I'd be pretty surprised if it's lower than that. I'd also be surprised if it's more than that. Like, I think that there is a pretty
there's a blueprint that they got from last.
Yeah, there's a blueprint. That's a good word for it. Yeah, there's a blueprint to go based off of to try to figure out what this is looking like for them. So you're going to be looking at guys like, Beanie Bishop, Josiah Scott, someone like that to kind of fill the void until you have Cam Sutton available to you. But once you have him available to you, yeah, I know things didn't go well in Detroit last year. They played him a lot differently than what he was utilized in Pittsburgh. Like, clearly, like, I think we saw that Pittsburgh was probably right in not paying him the money that Detroit gave him. Pittsburgh probably had a good number on what he was worth that they were willing to get to. And I know a lot of fans, including myself, were upset to see him go at the time. But clearly, Detroit way overvalued what he was going to bring to the table for them. But I do think in the role that Pittsburgh is going to bring him back into play, you got a really good football player. You just and I don't have any reason to believe that this won't be an isolated instance with him. Hopefully it is. And at this point forward, we can just talk about football and that be it with Cam Sutton. And you talked about the cost because of this being the situation. You get him for the vet min. Plus, he's not even going to make all that money because of the suspension. Like very cheap contract. They did a definitely starting capable slot cornerback on this team to really complete the secondary. Like, I know that we had obviously a very uncomfortable conversation to start here about our personal feelings on it, but from a football perspective, across the board on the defense now, like, I know that we could probably bring up some questions that we have with the depth, but the starters at each spot, I feel good about.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at the defensive depth chart just like before we were going into the record, and I'm looking at the starters, and I think it's really, really good. I mean, on defensive line, you've got Larry Ogunjobi, Keanu Benton, Cam Hayward. That's pretty stout. TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith are on the outside of that defensive line, and then in the middle, you have Patrick Queen and Landon Roberts, but then we'll see what type of involvement Cole Holcomb has, how long it takes him to get acclimated back to like football play speed, I guess, after his injury. But still, you have him. And then the secondary just got so much more solid with Joey Porter Jr., Deshaun Elliott, Minka Fitzpatrick, Dante Jackson, and Cam Sutton. I think this is a really, really good defense, top to bottom. And knock on wood, if everyone stays healthy for the outcome of this season, I think that this defense has the potential to be like one of the top 5 in the league. I think that they're that good, that stout, and mainly because of their starters. Obviously, I think there are questionable holes in the second string and some of the depth. But when you just look at these starters, man, and what you think and maybe it'll be different this year, but I've become accustomed to the defense having to carry the Steelers to wins. I'm hoping that turns around a little bit this season, but I feel very comfortable if that's going to be the case again in 2024, that the defense is going to have the capabilities to do so. Obviously, I want the offense to be able to step up more with different offensive coordinator, different quarterbacks. There's just going to be totally differences on this offensive side of the ball from last season. But again, feeling like if you get into situations where your defense is going to have to win you some of these games, I feel really good about that.
Yeah, I was talking with Alan today on Steelers Afternoon Drive. Go check that out, by the way. And he's not a fan. Like, he is going to tell it how it is, better or worse. And he thinks they could be the best defense in the NFL. Like, that is how high he is on this defense when you talk about the talent that was brought in. Like, I know that we've mainly focused on the turnover on the offensive side, but look at what they've done defensively now too. I mean, Dante Jackson's a new piece. Cam Sutton is coming back, obviously, but he's a different piece from last year. Deshaun Elliott, Patrick Queen. They've got new guys at the second and third levels of this defense. So I think, in the grand scheme of things, they can be, like I said, top 5 to 7. Alan said top 5, but went as far as saying that he thinks that they could be the best. And I wouldn't put it past them. I think that they are a really good unit top to bottom. When you have dudes at every level, like up front, Cam Hayward, Alex Highsmith, TJ Watt, second level, Patrick Queen, third level. Well, I mean, third level kind of going in a loop there. Joey Porter Jr., Minka Fitzpatrick. Like, you got at least one star player. I'm willing to put star on Joey Porter Jr.'s name after just one season at every single level of this defense. And that, to me, is just such a game changer. What's going on, everybody? Smitty from Around the 412, and I just want to take a quick second to give a shout out to our folks at Game Changers. Their logo on the screen right now, right above my microphone. Over 2,000 different designs in their catalog. Luxury heavyweight material. I am wearing one of their shirts right now. Best vintage t-shirts in the game. Head over to gamechanger.la or pick6.la to pick up some shirts. And guess what? Use code AT412. Save yourself $10 on your order every single time. Again, gamechanger.la or pick6.la. Best vintage t-shirts in the game. Check them out. Bang. Also, I said 2,000 on there. I need to update that for a couple reasons. One, I only had a mustache in the recording of that video. Two, there's now over 3,000 designs at gamechanger.la and pick6.la. So, also, I just realized too, I think those were probably what they were referring to. Friend of the show, former YouTube editor of the show, Johnny Tubes, John Sargison, put us in a group chat the other day and asked us about our ads during the show, and then like didn't respond after you asked a follow-up question. Like, but anyway, but that's on him. So he watches the show. So hopefully when he hears this, we're calling him out publicly now about that. So, but anyway, go check that out. Gamechanger.la, pick6.la. Save yourself $10 when you use code AT412 at checkout. Again, over 3,000 different designs. If you're watching the NBA Finals right now, they just came out with a new NBA Finals design, also a new Luka design, and a new Jason Tatum design because of the NBA Finals going on right now. Like, they are on it. If something's going on in the world, they're getting a t-shirt design. So shout out to them over there. But yeah, I do believe that this defense, top 5 to 7 for sure. I could see number 1 if all things go right, if everything clicks, if Patrick Queen is what he is, if we're what we're expecting him to be, and is able to not only what he's going to do for the linebacker room, but like the second and third levels. Like, I don't think people realize it's not just about that, like what he's going to do for Minka at that next level too, like, because Minka had to play in the box so much last year and almost operate as a linebacker at times. Patrick Queen should be able to erase a lot of that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that not whether they'll be number 1 in the NFL. A question I want to know is, what's it going to take for them to be number 1 in just their own division? Because when you look at like defenses like the Browns and the Ravens as well, those are very good defenses. And so number 1, that's a very lofty goal. I respect it by Allen, and I appreciate that as a fan. But man, when you look at some of the defenses just in their own division, you're wondering if they could be the best in there.
I'm willing to say all 3 that we mentioned. Because Cincinnati, to me, has one of the better defensive coordinators, but I think that there's a talent gap between them and the rest of the division on the defensive side of the ball. I'm willing to say that the 3 that we mentioned, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Baltimore, all 3 will be in the top 7.
Yeah, I mean, I think so too. I think that you could probably get into a scenario where at least 2 of them are top 5. Maybe even all 3, depending on how the season goes.
And the way that they play each other, like, 13-10 games, 17-14 games, something like that. Like, yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of like a Cam Sutton suspension, he will, even if he gets a 6-game suspension, he will not miss a divisional opponent.
Yeah, that would put him, let's work with that number as 6 games. He would return for Sunday Night Football against the Jets in week 7.
You were such a nerd for knowing that.
Yeah. I mean, I could rip off their entire schedule right now if you wanted me to, but
okay, Mr. Season ticket holder.
We don't need to do that right now. No, I mean, the defensive side of the football has to have you very excited. Let's flip the script, I guess, and talk a little bit about the offensive side of the football and what's going on through OTAs. So, not that I'm there, and like, I want to preface by saying that because I feel like a lot of people kind of get the wrong idea. Like, when you're having conversations, you got to understand that most of the time when it's on a podcast platform like this, it's really secondhand information that either Alan has told me, Nick has told me, I've seen on the X sphere, and that's the way I'm getting this information. But all reports from talking to the people that I talk with, Calvin Austin III has really been a standout guy through OTAs. Like, if there is a guy in that receiver room right now that is stepping up and making a case for them to like maybe not go and get another receiver, I still think that they want to. But if they don't, if there's a guy in that room right now that is kind of putting his stamp on that spot for more of a role, it's Calvin Austin, which is interesting to me. Like, talking with Allen, they're not just using him as you would think, like just as like a slot guy. They're doing a lot of different stuff with him. You're seeing him like work free in the red zone, like, at his height and weight, you would think that that'd be an area where he really struggled, because when getting condensed spaces and guys can get their hands on him, but they're finding ways to get him free releases. And it's so intriguing to me. If Calvin Austin takes a leap this year, and again, if I'm them, I'm still adding another receiver somewhere. But if that's the case, I mean, he's a guy that I really like coming out in 2022. In the 4th round, I thought that he was more than just like a gadget type player. Even if he takes on like a Khalif Raymond role for this team, I know I've probably mentioned that so many times just because of the Arthur Smith connection, but like, I think that there's a lot of room there for him to grow within this offense. Like, I don't even think that we've kind of scratched the surface for what he can contribute at the NFL level. And it's a lot due to the offense that he played in under Matt Canada.
Yeah, that's very true. I don't think that Matt Canada's offense or just the coordinator himself really knew how to utilize Calvin Austin. And then obviously missing your first year due to injury doesn't help his case at all. But last season, you saw little spurts of talent throughout the season with Calvin Austin. And I think that there's some stuff to grow on there. And I think as a player, there's stuff to grow on. I've mentioned before, and I think I mentioned it during – it might have been even not just last season. It might have been the season before that, his rookie season, or what would have been his rookie season, that I liked him in the red zone because of his quickness side to size. I thought it made him a red zone threat, and they could do things to get him open in that way. And so the fact that they're using that now, that just is a callback to what something that we've already noticed with Calvin Austin before, and the fact that he's actually being utilized to his abilities. And I think that's probably what held him back the most with Matt Canada's offense is they just didn't know how to use him. And so I think if you get an offensive coordinator that can figure out how to plug and play with him, I think that'll work. And Calvin Austin, I don't think he's going to be pushing for, especially if they bring in somebody. I'm not going to say he's going to be like wide receiver 3. He's definitely going to be wide receiver 4 behind Roman Wilson, George Pickens, and whoever they bring in. But I do think that they could be pushing for more playing time depending on who they bring in as well. But I do think that he can push for more playing time. Even if they do bring in another receiver, I think that they could push for somebody and pushing like Van Jefferson for that wide receiver 4 spot and getting in on some of these plays. I think that Calvin Austin has the capability to do so. I just don't think that he's been utilized because of the lack of knowledge of what do we do with this guy. And then I think that's in part on Matt Canada.
Yeah, what's interesting to me, you mentioned Roman Wilson there. Allen has said he's probably been one of the worst receivers so far through. But like, he's a rookie, and he prefaced by saying if you would have asked him at this time last year, Joey Porter was the worst corner in the room. Mm-hmm. So like, rookies, they get better quick from like not to the level that Joey Porter obviously got to. Like, that's an anomaly. But from the time that they're drafted till the end of training camp, you will see massive leaps in terms of the quality of the player. So not necessarily anything to worry about, but yeah, Roman Wilson, I guess, has had a rough OTAs, a lot of drops. It's because the way that he put it to me is he's completing about 95% of the play. Like, there's always something at the end of the play, whether it's, completing the catch or whatever is happening. But so it's not necessarily anything pre-snap, still running his routes, getting open, but then something goes wrong. So
and maybe maybe this is just me trying to make an excuse for the guy, but maybe it just has to do with something about playing football in shorts as well. Like, because sometimes players do kick it up a notch and play differently when they do have the pads on. So I don't want to try to take away any blame from Roman Wilson. I'm not trying to do that, but just trying to think what could be possibilities along with him being a rookie. Some players do also play different if it's actual like game speed in pads and everything compared to like what they're doing in shorts. And I mean, I guess they're wearing shoulder pads, but they're not hitting each other.
They call them shells.
Yeah,
they're in shells right now, or were, because OTAs wrapped up the day of recording this. So you'll have 3 days of mandatory minicamp next week, and then about a month or July 23rd. So however long that is, about a month and a half or so off until we go to training camp. So I put out a poll, and I ran it for just a few hours, 4 hours, because I put it out at 4 and I wanted to make sure that it ended before we recorded this, to get people's thoughts on Justin Fields versus Russell Wilson. Who do they want to start and why? And the reason that I put this out there, Justin Fields spent some time getting with Nate Herbig under center and throwing the ball to George Pickens at OTAs today. So they're not doing like full it wasn't like all of him, Justin Fields, with like all of the number one group, but he was working with some guys that right now are number ones because Herbig's still operating in front of Frazier for the time being. So I put out a poll, 212 votes. Certainly 212 people did not respond with their why, but I still appreciate the interaction for sure. So 212 votes, very close on this. Russell Wilson, 52%, Justin Fields, 48%. I will go through some of the replies, and then I guess we can give our thoughts if you feel one way or another on this. Obviously, you have to feel one way or another, but, are you that strong in opinion one way or the other? We'll find that out. Fax Mob, my guy Fax Mob, which, by the way, big shout out to Fax Mob. I don't know if I gave him the appreciation that it deserved, but the night of the draft, he gave us a $10 super chat. And I know I thanked him in the moment, but I was going back through today, like checking out some monetizations that I had to for the channel, and I went and saw that we had a $10 super chat back then, and I had totally forgotten about it. So big shout out to Fax Mob. We certainly appreciate that. But he said, especially since his game sort of mimics Russ, Fields can still be a long-term answer. I'd love if he can learn this offense the best way he can before playing. Gives time for Russ to be a bridge QB, and Justin doesn't have to rush to take over the job. He will be at his best, IMO. So Fact Mob sounds like he wants Russ for the season, but believes that Justin will be the long-term solution for this team, which is, again, very interesting because they are both only guaranteed to be here in 2024. So, what does that look like for 2025 if you are bringing Justin back? Caleb says, I want Justin just due to what he can bring to the offense. Also understand him potentially resetting for a year behind Russ, but Justin opens up more of Arthur Smith's offense in so many more ways than Russ can. Drew, playing both sides of the coin here, Drew. I'm cool with either. I think they both fit the offense well. I'd just rather have the one with a brighter future getting the reps. So that would be obviously leaning Justin, but he said he's cool with either. So, Drew, I would have rather you just put a stamp on this, just been like Justin, because of what you said in the second half of that post. I'm good either way. He means
Justin. He just didn't want to actually claim
it. Well, and this person kind of said the pain that never ends is this person's username. So whatever you're going through, pal, please reach out to us or somebody.
He's just a pirate fan.
You got me. Yeah, you're probably. I believe that he is. I'm good either way, but I wouldn't be opposed to Russ starting while Fields refines his skills. So, kind of the same thing there. And then Matthew said, in a perfect world, Justin Fields would be the guy. But let's be honest, dude. Dude needs to settle himself and refocus. Russ has the experience that he can run the show and be successful. So he's my choice. Excuse me. So we got Russ for the Facts Mob, Justin for Caleb, Justin for Drew, I guess Russ for the pain that never ends. They were even more on the fence than Drew, honestly. And then Matthew said Russ. So even in the replies, it was pretty much split down the middle, just like the poll went. So pretty much 50-50 here. And seeing as how there's two of us, let's see if we can kind of keep up the trend of it being 50-50 and each pick one. What do you think? What's your thought right now?
So I think the question's tough, if I'm being honest, because
you're going to give an answer like Drew.
No. I'm not. I'm going to say who I want to start this season.
All right.
But I do think the question's tough because if you're only looking at this season, I think it's easier to say which one. But I think if you're just looking at the future of the organization, I think that question is harder to answer because of what you brought up. They're both only on these one-year contracts. And so after the season, you are probably not re-signing both. You're probably only re-signing one, and it's probably going to be the one that you're expecting to be the starter moving forward. And so that's why I think that the question is tough, because basically whichever one I say is who is probably who I would say as the starter moving forward, despite that not being the case. This year alone, 2024, I am going with Russell Wilson. I think he's more established as a starter.
Okay.
I think he is going to be better from day one as a starter. I think there's definitely some things that Justin Fields does differently than Russell Wilson that he brings to the table, especially with his mobility in the running game. But despite that, I do think that Russell Wilson from day one would be the better, more established starter. I think that his second year in Denver was underrated a little bit, especially with what he was working with when Sean Payton not even wanting him as the quarterback and all that. I do think that he was pretty good his second season in Denver, despite being benched for a little bit and everything. There's a lot of factors playing into that. But I think that going into this season, 2024 opening up, I would prefer Russell Wilson as the starter. However, in my mind, I'm thinking Justin Fields is obviously the easier answer for the future. Younger, there's higher ceiling at this point in the career, could be potential starter for the future. That's why I think the question is tough to answer, because for this season alone, I want Russell Wilson as the starter. But for the future, I lean Justin Fields because of the younger quarterback and the capabilities that could bring. And that's why it's tough for me to just take out the mental of looking for the future of the organization. But as this season alone, and as the question was asked, I'm going with Russell Wilson.
A lot of the things that you said in there about Justin Fields are why I'm picking Justin Fields. Now, I don't expect that to be the case. I think it's going to be Russell Wilson. But if it were my call, it would be Justin Fields. And the reason being is, if I felt like this team was quarterback dependent on them being a Super Bowl contender, I would say Russell Wilson, because I feel like he is the safer option. But I don't believe that that's the case. I think the Steelers could certainly be a playoff team this year. I think they are contenders to the AFC North, but I don't view them as a legit Super Bowl contender in 2024. I think that this is more about big picture for me. And if there is a long-term solution at quarterback on the roster right now, it is very, very clearly Justin Fields. So I would rather try to find an answer to the most important question in football, and meaning the most important position in football at quarterback for the Steelers, and see if we have an answer long-term there at that spot, as opposed to maybe being a game or two additionally better in 2024 by having Russell Wilson. Again, I don't expect this to be the case. I think it's going to be Russell Wilson, and I'm okay with it. Like, I don't dislike the idea of Russ being the starting quarterback, but if this was the ball in my court, I'm making the decision, I'm always going to be looking big picture. And I think that I would rather try to figure out, do we have a long-term solution at quarterback in Justin Fields than trying to win another game or two with Russell Wilson being the starting quarterback.
See, I guess that's why I answered the question wrong, or not necessarily wrong. I answered it differently because I was only looking at it as the question was asked for this season. And ultimately I agree with you. Right. If I'm looking at the big picture, I want Justin Fields because of the future. But if I do think that if you want the quote unquote better chance to win right now, it's hard to say that when you have like a veteran quarterback. Then normally that's a quote that you give to like a rookie coming in and you're comparing him to other rookies. But if you want the better chance to win and win the most games, I would give the edge to Russell Wilson.
I would too. It's just taking into consideration we are just talking about 2024. 2024 is also the only year that we have both of these guys on the roster. So like, if you don't find out about Justin in 2024, who's to say that you even give 2025 to him to show you anything?
That's what I feel like a lot of Steeler fans have the notion that Russell Wilson is going to get either benched or hurt sometime this season, and then Justin Fields is going to save the day. And I don't know if that's true, but in my head, I really feel like a lot of Steeler fans think that both are going to be starting games this season, and significant amounts of games this season. And then it's going to be like a big decision for the Steelers of which one they're going to keep. Like, I feel like it's going to be playing out like a movie in a lot of Steeler fans' heads, or like that's how they want it to play out.
Well, if both play, I don't think it's going to be a decision of which one to keep. Whichever one, in this case, probably Russell. If he started and got benched, I don't think it's a decision for them after this.
If it's an injury,
clearly gone. Yeah, if it's an injury, that obviously complicates things.
What if he's playing good and he gets injured and then...
But you would also have to assume, like, we got Russell for very cheap this year. That's this year. Now, if he plays well this year, it's not like he's signing again for the vet minimum. Like, that's not happening. So while we are
he's got a sugar mama. Come on.
While we are very fortunate with what we're paying the quarterback room this year, it's not like that's going to continue to be the case beyond. So... yeah, again, I'm answering this question. I understand it's for just 2024, but I'm still looking at it as just 2024. Like, I would rather find out in 2024 do we have a quarterback solution going forward than, winning 11 games as opposed to 10 or 10 games as opposed to not, whatever it might be. Whatever the difference is with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields.
I'll give you this. I do think that game in and game out, Russell Wilson might be the better quarterback, but Justin Fields will probably be the more entertaining quarterback to watch game in and game out.
Yeah, I mean, ceiling wise, the best quarterback performance that we have in 2024. If they each were given 8.5 games, I guarantee that the best performance you would see would be from Justin Fields. The most consistent performance would be from Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's tough. If you're the Steelers, because the Steelers got to be thinking about that too, right? Like, they got to be thinking about the future of their quarterback position. They got to be thinking about, like, should we get, even though Russell Wilson is balling, or hopefully balling, should we try to get Justin Fields in there? Like, we don't know what he's like. Because imagine you are the Steelers and Russell Wilson plays out this season and you do well with Russell Wilson. Justin Fields doesn't really see the field at all unless it's in some of those, like, wildcat plays that we've talked about potentially in the run game. He doesn't see the field at all as quarterback. He signs somewhere else in free agency, is a starter there, and then looks like a great quarterback, and he didn't see the field at all with the Steelers. Like, how foolish are you of the Steelers if that happens? Because you missed out on potentially I'm going to stop the word franchise quarterback. I'm not going to stop throwing that around until we actually find a guy that could be that. Because
that's why I said long-term solution.
Like you might miss out on the opportunity to have Justin Fields long-term if Russell Wilson plays the entire season, even though Russell Wilson might be your best option just for this season. I feel like they are kind of caught in a pickle as far as the organization goes, because you're going to want to see both of these guys play on the field, but only one of them can be on the field at once, at least at the quarterback position.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch this play out. And I know a lot of people don't think this is going to be a competition. Like, why though? Like, I do think that Russ is, like, right now in pole position, but why wouldn't it be? Like, they don't have any attachment to Russell Wilson. Like, they gave him a 1-year vetman deal. I understand that he also oddly has a no trade clause, but, like, who cares? When would that come into play? But I don't know why people have the thought in their mind that this won't be a competition. Like, if Justin Fields is better in training camp than Russell Wilson, if he is very good and Russell is bad, why would they not roll with Justin Fields?
I don't see why that's even in question. Like, I think that, and when I say even in question, like, it not being a competition, I think it fully is a competition. Now, if this was flipped and if Kenny Pickett was still here, I think it's way less of a competition going into training camp. I think it is definitely Russell Wilson is our penciled in starter and Kenny Pickett is our penciled in backup. If Kenny Pickett plays himself into the starter, great, but no one in the world is going to be expecting that to happen. But bringing in Justin Fields, I don't think you're trading for a guy of that pedigree. I'm not going to say that caliber because he hasn't shown a ton at the NFL level. But as far as, like, the pedigree of being that high draft pick, what he did in college, and the ceiling that he could potentially have, you're not going to trade for a guy like that and then put some, like, training wheels on him and say you're not going to compete for the starting spot. I think that would be totally foolish. And in a situation the Steelers find themselves where no quarterback from last year's roster is even rostered this year, it's free game. I mean, heck, Brian Allen could win the starting spot for all I care. I just want the best quarterback playing. And for the future of this franchise, it definitely could be Justin Fields. And if he's going to be the starter and win the starting job, no offense to Russell Wilson, I don't care if you came here and you're all loving Pittsburgh and everything. If Justin Fields is a better quarterback, then he needs to play.
Kyle Allen, by the way.
Kyle Allen. Brian Allen. Why did I pull that one out?
Brian Allen is a center that we had linked to the Steelers at one point. Yeah.
Brian Allen is also a safety that we played Call of Duty with that went to the University of Utah.
Oh, yeah. That's right. Yeah, I forgot about him, actually. Kyle Allen, I was at the Pirate game with last night. Very cool dude. But anyways, back to the topic at hand
Subtle flex.
here. Yeah, so it's one of those storylines I'm so interested to see play out the competition this year. And again, I think all the more intriguing because none of these guys are on the roster beyond 2024. We did have a couple questions here that we can get to before we get out of here. David said, is Omar done trying to get a big name wide receiver? The fact that it says big name in here is why I'm a little bit I don't know how to answer this, just because I really don't know what stones they are still turning. Like, I know they've turned stones. I will say I got a text from somebody, and this was going back to last week, that said that they were still kind of in contact with the 49ers about Debo. So Brandon Ayuk may be no longer on the table. But as we were recording, I got a little nugget here. This put out by Alex Kazora, always Steelers Depot. Alex does great work over there. Teji Hushmanzada, very familiar name for us Steelers fans, who works with Brandon Ayuk, says Ayuk is pessimistic about reaching a deal with the 49ers. Says it would take an Amon-Ra St. Brown type deal in the range of $30 million APY. That just shows you they're not willing to give him that type of contract. Otherwise, it would be done already, said TJ Hushmanzada. I do not foresee the Steelers being in that market either. $30 million per season, plus the draft capital that it would take to acquire Brandon Ayuk. And to me, he's the one guy that I'm like crossing off immediately for this reason. Not only because, one, that's a lot of money committed to the receiver position. And don't get me wrong, if they did it, I wouldn't be upset about it. Love Brandon Ayuk. But that also, and I want to get your thought on this, to me, completely slams the door on a long-term future of George Pickens here. If you believe that there is one here right now, like a potential to be one right now, there's not. If you go and get Brandon Ayuk, pay him $30 million per year, you're having George Pickens play out this contract, assuming you can keep him from being disgruntled by the end of it. And maybe he's in a situation like Brandon Ayuk where he's trying to get traded somewhere else. But you're clearly saying that Brandon Ayuk is the guy that you're building this receiving room around, and you're just juicing whatever you can out of George Pickens. I think he's the one guy on the trade market that kind of blocks that. I think Debo's contract you can fit in, and it wouldn't affect George Pickens' long-term outlook. I don't know if DK Metcalf is even like a realistic possibility. I know Cortland Sutton is showing up to mandatory minicamp for the Broncos, he said. We'll see how that plays out. Maybe it gets contentious if he goes there, but still doesn't get rewarded with any type of new money. We'll see. But basically anybody else in the trade market, I don't necessarily think blocks the long-term future of George Pickens, but I think Brandon Ayuk certainly does.
I agree with that. And especially with George Pickens going into his third season. After this season, he's going to be in a contract year. You're talking about 1 year into a Brandon Ayuk contract, potentially, if it were to happen. You're going to be having to give a new contract to another wide receiver that was your wide receiver one, and you're not going to be able to pay both. You're not going to be able to do both. And whether you, Steeler fans, think that George Pickens is worthy of that contract like that or not, tell George Pickens that. He's going to be wanting his money, and I don't think that bringing in Brandon Ayuk is going to make him very happy. And I know a lot of people will say, like, well, who cares? It makes the Steelers teams better. I get it. I don't think the Steelers are going to do it. I don't think they're going to be involved with that. And I agree with you. I think that that would immediately basically take out them from a return of George Pickens on a second contract with the Steelers. I just don't think it would be able to happen. Brandon Ayuk, and just for me, I love the talent, love the player. I just don't want a contract that big on my team right now. And I understand, like, you don't have a lot of money offensively, like wound up in your offense. I don't think that you need to make a splash like that for your first big contract moving forward on the offensive side of the ball, because of what it would affect with the wide receiver room as far as contracts goes, and just the offense in general and the team in general. That's a lot of money for one player.
I would talk myself into it for sure if they did it. I'm pretty on the fence about it, but here's why I'm leaning no. And a lot of things that you said are true, but I will say that none of that would matter to me if, and I just was talking about it last time, if they had a long-term solution at quarterback, we already knew who it was, I'd have no problem giving Brandon Ayuk his contract. But when you don't know who your quarterback is going to be, how can you commit that contract for a wide receiver that's going to be catching passes from right now, John Reese Plumlee in 2025? Like, you can't build a roster that way. Like, you just can't. Like, so if we're talking about, a season or two down the line, and this big name receiver, basically the same caliber of player, is in a situation like this, then sure, hopefully we have a solution at quarterback that we know, like, set in stone beyond just one season. That's not, people don't go about business that way. So we'll see. I still think that the receiver that they get, very possible, comes from somebody that is cut at training camp during that time. Like we always see somebody as a surprise cut. Speaking of cuts, Smitty from around the 412 here. And while I may not have much hair, the hair that I do have will not be cut by anybody besides Keek at Keek's Barbershop. My friend Christian Circle, been with us since day one. Keek's Barbershop, located 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Download the app, The Cut. Book an appointment with Christian today, or you can do walk-in with Tony or Ashley. But again, Keek's Barbershop, 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. Go check them out. Old school vibe in there. Absolutely love it. Cannot recommend them enough. Wouldn't go anywhere else. Maybe I'll see you there. So I still think that that's probably the most likely route. Although I will say maybe they circle back to Michael Thomas if there's not like a trade to be had there. We talked about the Texans guys. Traylon Burks right now is covering kicks for the Titans. Like I don't see a way that continues. If it does continue, he's probably gonna be looking to get up out of Tennessee. So, maybe there's a different path there. If I had to put a name, you know what? I'll stand on it. I was the one to put it out there into the Twitter sphere, the X sphere, whatever you want to call it. I'm gonna say Michael Thomas becomes a Steeler before the season starts.
I dig it. I don't think it's going to be one of these big name guys. We've said that several times on this show and in previous weeks. I just don't think that it's going to work out to that case. If that was going to work out, I feel like that would have been a pre-draft thing that happened and not something that is post June 1st. Even though that it's obviously more capable past June 1st, I just feel like it would have happened a couple months ago if it was going to happen for the Steelers. Now,
for Ayuk, it really didn't matter post June 1. Like Debo, DK, yeah, those guys,
yeah, those guys it matters. And I even still, I don't think that that's going to happen. And even the one that I want the most, Cortland Sutton, I don't think is going to happen. I do agree with you though. Texans, a lot of their receivers make sense because of just how many they have, and Michael Thomas, I think, makes sense. It's a shame that the Tyler Boyd thing never worked out. He's in Tennessee now. I was really hoping that would end up working out. I don't know.
Here's the thing: if they sign Tyler Boyd, like before the draft, they don't draft Roman Wilson. It's a different receiver they target there.
Yeah, that's true.
And then post draft, they probably didn't have interest in Tyler Boyd because of getting Roman Wilson.
Yeah, that's fair. That's very fair. I agree with you though that it's going to be somebody that's like kind of like a mid-tier receiver now, or even like maybe below mid-tier, like an older Robert Woods from the Texans. I feel like that'd be something that could work out. Michael Thomas is a good shout though. I think that that one could make sense, especially whenever you're talking about like he's probably competing to be wide receiver 3 on the team ahead of Roman Wilson. And so if you work out where Michael Thomas is your wide receiver 4, I feel very comfortable with that situation. So I think there's some good possibilities for the Steelers still at receiver. It's just something's got to give at some point. I feel like this is going to be a conversation we've had all season going into training camp, still having this conversation.
Yeah, like I mean, Michael Thomas, even if people aren't on board with him, if it shakes out where like Calvin Austin takes this like huge leap, Roman Wilson is a really good rookie, and then Michael Thomas is like, you're 4th in the pecking order there. And that's not even including Pat Freiermuth, who is going to produce like a receiver in this offense. You're talking about 5 really good pass catchers. Again, we're talking very optimistically about this, like in a situation where everything goes right in this wide receiver group. But I'm just saying, like, if that world were to occur and Michael Thomas is your 4, nobody would be complaining about it the way that it looks right now. I think everybody's looking at it the way they are because they assume that he's wide receiver 2 in this room right now if you bring him in.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, but I just don't view him that way. I think that you could – I think that if you get some production from Roman Wilson and you get a leap from one of these guys – and you look at like what you mentioned, and a lot of people don't realize is how much Pat Freiermuth is going to have an impact on the receiving part of the offense. I feel like it is even if he's not wide receiver 4, he's probably going to end up being around pass catcher 4 at the very least if he comes in. So when you even look at it that from that standpoint, I feel like that's a very healthy offense for the Steelers, and it's something to be excited about.
Yeah. Well, okay, there's my prediction going forward. Is Michael Thomas will become a Pittsburgh Steeler at some point here. That's one that I think they'll wait on, though. Like, I haven't heard him connected anywhere else. I feel like they're going to continue to try on the trade market, and if something doesn't come to fruition, they'll circle back to Michael Thomas and bring him in. So that's where I'm at with that one. Last question that we got here. This is from Dalton. We're going back to the QB conversation. Seems like a foregone conclusion Russ will start if Russ is moderately successful this year, say gets to the playoffs / wins a playoff game. You have to assume that they re-sign him. If that scenario plays out, do they try to sign Fields still somehow as a future contingency?
I mean, we kind of talked about that. It's tough from the organization to re-sign a player you didn't see take the field at all. And so
Right.
if
But
you
it could also be, I'm curious to see how they approach the Russ thing, because we just talked about it. They really, like, they haven't had a big money quarterback contract on the books since Ben. Are they going to be willing to commit enough money to Russ to bring him back? Like, what is it? I don't know what it's going to take, but I'm just saying, like, I think a lot of people have in their mind, like, just because he's here for 1 year on the minimum contract does not mean that he's not going to be looking for 30 mil again next year when he's a free agent.
Yeah, and I think that's totally fair. And I've said before this, especially if he does come in and win a playoff game, has a good season, wins a playoff game for the Steelers, because I've said before that I think that could be the expectation for Russell Wilson. Because if you got to a playoff game with a combination of Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky, and Mason Rudolph, then you should definitely raise the bar a little bit to winning a playoff game with a quarterback like Russell Wilson. So if they were to get to that point, Russell Wilson has every case in the world to say, I've done something for you guys that you haven't done in like 7 years, is win a playoff game. So I should get some of this money. And I fully respect that. And I would understand that totally from his standpoint. I think that gets kind of tough for the Steelers, because then you got to debate, well, what's better? Lushing out all this money to a quarterback that has a questionable future, even though he had a good season with us just because of age and everything and where he's at in his career, or moving on and re-signing the guy that didn't really play the field at all but could have a potential better future, and you're basically starting over from like square one in terms of a starting quarterback because he didn't see the field at all in the season. I think it's really tough.
Yeah, I do. Like, I keep throwing it out there, and I know it's not like apples to apples with this comparison, but like, if Justin Fields is going to be coming back in 2025 and you presume as a starter, it's got to be like a Jordan Love type contract, right? Where it's like very incentive laden. If he plays very well, he's making good starting quarterback money, but like, you're also protecting yourself in the case that he doesn't play well. So it's just like a ton of incentives and bonuses kind of meshed into this contract to make it palatable. But the other side of that is, like, if Russ is coming back in 2025, I don't know that Justin's re-signing here to be the backup again. Like, I mean, granted, I don't know what
I think that's out the window. I personally think that's out the window if Russ comes back. Justin, I don't think will have any issue.
Yeah, I mean,
because the season before you just played out that same scenario. Why would you want to repeat it again? Because we've talked about how this is an open competition. If Russell Wilson wins that competition, plays out the season, wins a playoff game, gets re-signed by the Steelers, and you're going to have to compete again to get that starting spot, you literally, it would be like what's that movie, The Groundhog Day, where he just keeps living the same day over and over again? It would be like that, except on a year basis, because you're basically playing the same offseason, the same training camp, the same season over again. I don't think Justin Fields would be interested in that at all.
Yeah, like, the one thing that I've thought about, and I'm not like devil's advocate here, probably more so adding a caveat to that, is we just saw the league basically tell us what Justin Fields is worth, him going for a 6th round pick. Now, granted, Ryan Poles said he sent him to Pittsburgh because that's where he wanted to be. But do you really think, like, if somebody was offering significantly more than that, I'm not saying there wasn't maybe a slightly better offer that he could have taken, but like a significantly better offer, he's not going to do that just to accommodate Justin if somebody's offering like a 2nd or 3rd round pick. Like, I'm sorry, but he's not going to. So point being, if the rest of the league wouldn't have given up that type of draft pick for Justin, and now we're talking about another year where he wasn't the starter behind Russell Wilson, is there going to be a better opportunity for him around the league?
I don't know if there's going to be a better opportunity, but I think there is going to be
just a different one,
because I think it's different because it's going to be free agent versus having to give up assets to get a player. Like, what if you get into a scenario, and I'm not saying it's going to be this place, but look at the Denver Broncos right now, where Zach Wilson is playing as their best quarterback room. Like, If you get a team in that type of situation, I feel like Justin Fields is an easy phone call. He has the potential to be a starting quarterback for that team. There's not really a lot of competition in the quarterback room. And I think that an example of Denver Broncos, if Zach Wilson really does turn it around in Denver and play as a better quarterback.
You think he's the play over Bo Nix?
I mean, it's reports that he's the best quarterback right now. I think even if he doesn't play the entire season, I think there's a chance that he starts out the season as the starter over Bo Nix. Because I don't think Bo Nix, even though he's a first-round quarterback, and I've always said, and I'm very much in the camp that I think quarterbacks should start if they're not ready. So if Bo Nix is not ready, I have no problem with him sitting behind Zach Wilson, especially if it's reporting that Zach Wilson is showing as the
Denver is not.
And Denver has no interest in winning right now anyway. They're going to want to probably draft another quarterback next year if that's the case. I just don't think, actually maybe not. It's not really a good quarterback class. But I don't think that it's going to be hard for Justin Fields to find a job after this season because he's going to be a free agent. And no matter what, there's always going to be some team that needs quarterback help. And if you're willing to take a chance on a guy, because he is going to be a guy that has not played an entire season, and if as a free agent, he's going to be able to be signed for cheap. I think that's a team. A lot more teams are going to be willing to take a risk on that type of player than having to trade for that player like the Steelers did.
Yeah, no, I mean that's fair as well. We'll see how it plays out. It is just, I keep mentioning it, but it's just so intriguing to me. Like, how many teams ever have traded for a quarterback and signed a quarterback both on 1-year deals, like of this caliber too. Like, it's just, so I'm so intrigued to see how this whole thing plays out. Really good conversation. We appreciate the couple questions we got. We appreciate the topics that are given to us. Again, hit us in the comments with anything that you want us to talk about. Tweet at us with the comments. The shout out to everybody that participated in the poll. Tyler, you got anything else?
No, I mean, I'm ready for football, man. All this discussion of like Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, how good the defense is going to be. Don't get me wrong. I love the other sports. Hockey's over right now. They're abysmal. I don't really care about them right now. Pirates, I love a lot of things going on, but man, football is just always going to be the most exciting thing to talk about. It's going to be the most interesting thing to talk about, and it's going to be the thing that I am yearning for the most come fall. So yeah, man, I'm just ready for football again.
I mean, I feel like it even shows, in the content. We're fans of all the teams, but our Steelers episodes, like even right now, right before we started recording, we were like, we probably won't get anywhere close to an hour, and that's fine. They don't need to be an hour. It's episode is going to be about an hour. So, anyways, I will throw it real quick to myself to tell you guys about everything custom designs, and then we will get out of here. Need a custom t-shirt, hoodie, tumbler? Stop what you're doing. Don't go anywhere else. Check out the link in the description. Everything Custom Designs. Our friend Haley Wagner, small business. She can do all that for you. She even does around the 412 merch, t-shirts, hoodies, long sleeve tees, bunch of different stuff. I even got a tumbler from her as well. So go check out the link in the description. Goes directly to her Facebook page. All of her stuff can be found there. Again, everything Custom Designs. Haley Wagner. She does great work. Can't recommend her enough. Go check it out. She also has an Etsy, and we have the link directly to our Around the 412 merch on her Etsy page in the description of the show. T-shirts, long sleeves, hoodies. I know maybe not that time of year wherever you guys are living, but still gear up now before we get into the fall for football season to make sure you have that on you. I think that's it. Everybody be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you guys don't miss an episode or a video posted throughout the week. Trying to get better with, posting some clips from the show, doing some short content. I know that we've done some video stuff that's not the episodes in the past, kind of like draft related or whatever when it's that time of year. Throw us ideas. We're open to whatever. If you guys have ideas for the type of content that you guys would like to see on the channel, throw that stuff in the description as well, or tweet at us, whatever works for you guys. If you are listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from, be sure to leave us a 5-star review over there, as well as subscribe over there so you guys get the notification when a new episode goes up on whatever your favorite listening platform is. Be sure to follow us everywhere at Around the 412, X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. I'm going to just delete the Threads thing from that because no one's over there. I don't think whoever created it probably isn't even on Threads at this point. So yeah, don't worry about Threads, but everything else, be sure to follow us over there. For Tyler, for Smitty, this has been the Around the 412 Steelers show. We'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.